Good afternoon, everyone. So I am Dylan Roberts. I'm a solutions architect here on the professional services team. So for today, let me just start off with going through a couple of announcements. So I'm sure many of you have seen the end of life support. A lot of this has already passed. More important one, or a more interesting one, is our product roadmap meetings. Next meeting is October 5th. This meeting will cover kind of where our product has been, where it's going. You can see what the next features or parts of decision are going to come out, some new modules, things like that. So it's a really good meeting to get into. Um, One more thing that's not on a slide is that we actually have a webinar coming up today at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And if you've been following our last few webinars, this one is also regarding AI using the OpenAI module, and this one is to build an RFP chatbot with AI using your old RFPs. So if that's of interest, feel free to sign up on our event site and you'll get a meeting link to that webinar starting at 1 p.m. Eastern today. So as usual, feel free throughout this session to put questions into the chat or into the Q&A. But we do happen to have one pre-submitted question for today. So that question was, is there a way I can apply CSS for all action buttons? And the answer is yes. So let me walk through that. First thing you would want to do is set up your CSS sheet. So I actually have an example here of what the action button CSS would look like. So this is the class you'd use. This is just some a background color of the button and then the text color that we'd like to make it. First step in this is to add your style sheet into decisions. So to do that, go to System, Designers, CSS, and you're going to add a document. Going through this action, you'll have the option to provide a title. So I'll just say Action Button CSS Sheet. You can provide a description. This will change the background on buttons in the system. And then I will go ahead and upload my action button CSS sheet and add it to the system. So once it's added, you could refresh and let's see where to put it. Let's see if I refresh action button CSS and you'll be able to see what I have added. So once you do that, next thing would be to go into a page. So the way you can apply this to action buttons is you have to apply the style sheet to a page. So a good example for this scenario where I have action buttons on a page is within one of my case entity folders. You'll see there's all these action buttons at the top and they're styled with the default styling for decisions. So if I were to just go in and edit this page, what I'd want to do is in the properties of the page, add the style sheet that I've just uploaded. So in this case, I will find the action button CSS, save it. When we go back, you'll be able to see that the action buttons now have a different styling across the entire page. So it took effect for the actual case entity page we designed, as well as any other action button that may be in the studio at that time on your current screen. There's not a way that I know of to apply this globally. The way to do this would be just by entering it on a page by page basis and choosing that style sheet. So I do see there's a question, is there a way to style a checkbox? That is a good question. Let's go ahead and build a form and let's see. I think I have a form. Test forms, cool. And just actually build a simpler flow. This was for an assignment example. Let's add a form in here. create a new one. Let's add a checkbox. Button. Save this. And connect this to here. True. Okay. So now I got a form with a checkbox on it, and let me run that flow to have it pop up. Okay, so by default, there's the checkbox. So there's some default styling which I forgot to show, I believe, but let's see if we can actually access this. So what I like to do is open up DevTools and figure out what it's using. So in this case, let me split the screen. That might make it easier for everyone to see. So if I do that here, it's here, go back. What we can see is that the checkbox is using a checkbox container. And then within that container, you should be able to have your checkbox and then your label as well. So with that, there is some default styling applied here, but let's see if I can find the class. It might be this div.dp checkbox holder. Let's just see. Which one does it? I'm gonna change the background color just to see if I can find something. Background, if I could type. Okay, that's not the one we're looking for. That is going to change the background of everything. Let's see. So that is for the checkbox specifically. And please bear with me, CSS is not my first skill here. Let's see though. Okay, so check holder is, I could see that would be the text box. Let me just see if I can change the background color. Okay, so this controls around the text of your checkbox. This would be dp dash check dot dash holder. I'll put that in the chat. Let me see if I can copy paste that. Okay, and then let's see if we can find the actual checkbox itself, though. See if we can do any styling on that. Hmm. So it looks like this would be what you could use then to actually style the checkbox itself. So these would be the two that I would look at, and I'm going to post them in the chat right now to actually work with the checkbox. But while we're here, let's see if there's any styling we can do to the checkbox on the form directly. So let's see if we can go under the view. Okay, so there's not much styling directly. Can I try to change the color? Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Run flow. Open up my dev tools again. Go to here. Let's see what happens if we do background color. Let's do red. Okay, so that didn't do it. Let's try to see. Instead of this blue, where is that blue coming from? Hmm. Let's, that doesn't change it. I'm not seeing anything for it, unfortunately. Input. What if I can't change that? Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not seeing a way to change that background color from that blue directly. Check one thing that I may have. I have one style sheet that touches a lot of components, so let me try to apply that real quick and see what we can do with that. Okay, so that did change the look and feel of it. Let me now run this flow. Okay, so there is a way. So this style sheet I have here, let me open it up and get what I'm using on it. Let me search for checkbox. Let me just look. There's quite a bit of different CSS for this. Okay, so this would be what you can use to change. Um, I'll post this in the chat. So here's two ways you can change the um, on hover. So what we're looking at, that blue, um, as well as before it's checked the background. So it looks like it's the form surface view DP check holder, and then you could change the hover input, the check before, and there's a few things you can do with that. So hopefully that helps you out with changing the style. So it does look like it's not as easy as I thought of just going to DevTools and looking. But hopefully these help you get across the line with changing that color. Okay, is there any other questions that anyone wants to cover? If not, I will go into a couple of things that have come up on the professional services team lately and just go over some pointers on them. So one thing is with reports. And with reports specifically, creating relationships between two tables. So let's go through an example here with that. I want to create a base report, and I'm going to use a couple of native decisions tables here. Um, so this wouldn't be the approach you'd always use, but these are just going to be some tables so I don't have to go through and create data. But let me just create a report of all assignments to start with. And this is going to be on my assignment table. Let's see, assignment. And I want to start with displaying, let me see the assignment name. Let me just see it created on date. Okay, so right now what I have is a report that shows me an assignment as well as a created on date. There's no filters applied to it. Now, for the example I'm going to use, there are a couple of built-in filters that will do this in the backend for you. So the assignment filter specifically, where you can filter the just assigned to me, assigned to a specific user. There's a couple of default filters we have with the assignment table, but what I'm going to do for this example to show how we join to different data sources is create a table relationship. So the first thing we need to do to figure out who is assigned to an assignment is relate our assignment table to our assigned to account table. To create a relationship, you would go like you're going to create a data type, go to database integration and add relationship. And this is where you can give it a unique name. So I'm going to say assignment um, to assigned to account. Pretty long name, but I want to be just specific for this example. And cool thing here is you could choose your connection. So for since I'm using local tables, I'm going to go with my local connection. But if I happen to have other tables or other database connections, you can choose which database you want to create this relationship for. So I'm going to go with my local connection. So now I'm going to start with my from table. And my from in this case is going to be my assignment. Let's see, assignment. So right here, entity underscore assignment. And the field I want to join by is going to be the assignment ID. So what I want to do is take that assignment ID and now join it to the assignment assigned to table. So let's go assigned to account. So what I want to do here is also say by a assignment ID, not account ID. So I want to join my assignment table to my assigned to account table by assignment ID. So I'm going to add that relationship now. You'll be able to see it here. So now what I want to do is go back into my report. And right now I have my assignment data source. Now I'll have the option, since I set up a related table, to add the related table into this report. So you can see my assigned to account relationship that I just created. So if I add this into here now, what you'll be able to see is that you have all of the fields now from the assigned to table. In this case, what our assigned to account holds is an account identifier, and that's the field I want to use at this point. So if I save this, so what this now shows is that we had a report of our assignment. We wanted to see who's it assigned to, so we joined it to our assigned to account table. By doing that, we are able to now get the fields to see, okay, what ID is it for? But we could take this a step further. So our assigned to account table only has a couple of fields, one of them being account ID, which this doesn't necessarily, which works. It tells you who it's assigned to, but let's say we want end users having a cleaner way and we want to see their email address. So to do that, we can now say we want to join our assigned to um, table, assigned to account table, to our entity account table. So to do that, we'll have to add another relationship into the report. So let's go build that one. So let's go ahead and follow that same process of a database integration, add a relationship. Let's just say assigned to account to entity account. And I want to choose my connection again. This would be my assigned to account. And I will say, in this case, I want account ID, and I want to join it to my entity assignment table by the same thing. Let's see, not entity assignment, I'm sorry, entity account here. Let's see. Entity account by account ID. So let's add this relationship into here and go back and modify the report now. And let's add in this related table. So you'll see now I have two options because there's the new possibility that I can relate my entity account. With this, I'll now have the user's email address, and you'll be able to see under entity account dot the rest of those fields assigned to that account table. So let's go down to email address. And now we'll be able to actually see the email. So let's say we don't want us to see account ID anymore. Now we have a much cleaner way to view this data. So that is one thing that becomes very valuable, honestly, with a lot of people forget that we could do the joins like this. One also thing you could do to take it a step further, maybe it's not always an inner join you're looking to do between the tables. And you can change that. So by default, the join type is always set to inner join. But let's say you have a specific table and you want to do a left join or a right join. By clicking on the joined source or the related table, you have the ability to change what type of join is being done. Is whether it's a left join, right join, or inner join. And of course, this is going to vary depending on what your use case is with the data. Okay, so any questions on that? Don't see any. Okay, so let's say we want to take this. We built the report how we want. And let's say we want to, for some reason, use the data within a workflow. You actually have the ability, and a lot of people forget that we can do this, is run a report to get the data within a workflow. And actually, before I jump into that, let me go back to the report. There's an option here under report access to generate a step to basically generate a data type with the fields from this report. So if I do my assignment, let me just call it something so I can tell. Lunch and learn assignment report. What this type will do is be generated based off of my data fields that I've added to this report. And every time I update or save this report, maybe change fields, it'll recompile that structure for me. So it's always up to date with whatever you set on your report. So we'll see here, it might take a bit to save because it needs to create it. Okay, and once we've set it, we have a code compile. So let's go ahead and go into a workflow. And I'm just going to say run report. So you can see here in the top right, the compile worked and it created that type for us. So now to run that report in a workflow, you can use a run report step. So it would look like you're just going to run it, but you would choose right here your data option. We're going to select from a type. And let me pick the report first, just because I think it'll default to the type for this report for us. So let's go lunch and learn all assignments. Click off of it and look, and then what it did for us was selected by default the output type we'd want to go to. So this is if you have defined what your report type. So this, the only way it would default to an output type for you is if you did the report access checkbox and asked to the decisions to generate that type for you. Otherwise, when you use a run report step, you would have to either use data rows, export it as a CSV. You could still select a type though if you didn't let the report or decisions generated for you. You would just have to set up a converter flow that basically tells the system what field number, so field goes to which column on your object. So does field one go to your first column in the object, or you'd have to set up that mapping manually. So let's go ahead and just map this start to finish. And what we'll be able to see in our data explorer is that we have, it's just by default called report, but it's our type lunch and learn assignment report. And what this has is the couple of fields that I had added onto it. So you have your account ID, created on date, email address, and entity name now available to you within your workflow. So let's say you're reporting on this, and you wanted to say in a workflow now, I want to have a couple of different filters applied to it. The way you would get that passed through to the workflow step is by modifying your report. Let's say I want to see just for a specific email address. If I do email, let's say email equals, you can set this now as a runtime editable filter. So let's save that. And what that's going to do for us is actually put an input on that run report step. So let's see. Yep, you'll see right here under inputs, entity account, email address equals. This way, you can, within your workflows, you can configure some different filters. This could basically serve as a fetch entity step for you, but it might be a more complex fetch entities, because let's say what our fetch entities doesn't really let you do is join different tables. You can have a report to do the joins that you want, get it how you want the data structured, and then you can leverage the run report step with filters on it to take place for your fetch entity step. It's something that I don't see used too often, but I think it's pretty powerful with what you can do for it. So I often try to push for this approach because it's easy to configure. Once you get it set up, you can add fields to it. So let's just show that real quick. But I think it's a pretty neat thing that's not commonly used. So if we edit this report, let's just say I want to add a first name. So here, first name. So now I'm going to save this. Let the report save, and now the data type has to recompile again. So it'll go through that process. We should see, those are just some old structures I have. We should see the good compile come through in a couple seconds. Okay, so now that we've added first name onto here, the cool thing is that if we go into our run report, let's go into the data explorer report first. We now have a first name field for us. So it's really good how you can modify that as needed, add more columns, remove columns, and it'll just update that type for you. Okay, are there any questions on that from anyone? Okay, not seeing any come in. So I think that might be a good place to end for today. Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining, and if you want, join the webinar at 1 p.m. to learn more about some options with our AI that we're leveraging. Okay, thank you everyone.